Let's get the recording started. Before we get into some of the presentations, I did just want to go over some of our goals for this meeting. So tonight we are here to share with you all some resources and information that might be of interest to you as residents on the coastside about wildfire risk reduction, as well as what each of the agencies here on this meeting tonight are working on currently to manage or reduce wildfire risks. We share the aspiration for risk reduction for public safety, but acknowledge that we work in and around various resource constraints. And so we want to be able to focus on the types of strategic investments that we can make and have been making to work towards wildfire risk reduction in the near term. So what we want to share is what we do to manage wildfire risk today and what can be done collectively in the community or as residents as well. And we here have had some opportunities to present some of this information in public meetings previously, and have also heard input from the community over the past year. So we want to be able to make sure that information is shared regularly, that we're being able to be open and transparent with you all, and for you to hear this information directly from us and ask us questions. So this isn't the beginning or the end of our conversation around fuel reduction or wildfire risk reduction, but it's a discussion on what we can share for what's happening currently. And we want to be able to continue this community connection on the topic, since this will continue to be a priority into the future. And so I'm going to turn it over to Supervisor Horsley for a brief opening as well.
Oh, thanks, Hannah. I think you pretty much covered everything. This is really kind of an opportunity for us to tell the public and people who are concerned about all the things that we are doing. So we have people from CAL FIRE, and I think we have really kind of CAL FIRE is the second largest fire agency in the country, second only to New York City. I think they have unparalleled excellence in service and the ability to deal with things like wildfire. We have done lots of technology upgrades, and I'm sure that you'll hear about that. Some of the camera locations to do an early spotting of fires, the improvement in equipment from both CAL FIRE as well as our Parks Department. And you also hear from RCD, which is really kind of a partner for us. And Sheena has it's like, I think, a PhD, if I'm not mistaken, and works with us on our Fire Safe Council, as well as working on the scoping project of taking a look at or trying to figure out what to do with Quarry Park. As all of us know, Quarry Park was planted essentially about 100 years ago with blue gum eucalyptus. I think they have a lifespan of about 300 years, if I'm not mistaken, which that could well be, but I think that that's what the lifespan is. But it was planted there because essentially El Granado was pretty barren and windswept, and the developer wanted it to be a forested area and protected from wind. And it actually has worked pretty well, and people, basically essentially loved locating their house, especially close to this eucalyptus forest. Well, now it's become recognized as a potential, or thought of as a potential hazard. Then again, any forest is really essentially potentially a hazard as well. So in any case, what we are really focused on is making sure that we could provide as much safety as we possibly can. We are certainly working on evacuation routes, which I know is really a high priority for people on the coast, and as well as other areas of the county. And there are a number of projects that we are working on between Woodside, Portola Valley, Highway 3592, all the way into the coastside. So I don't know if you'll hear about all of that, but I think one of the things you ought to be really assured with is that the county is committed, CAL FIRE is committed, and RCD is committed to working on making our community safer and more resilient. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the real experts, Hannah, as well as Jonathan Cox and other people from CAL FIRE, and Sheena as well.
Thank you, Supervisor. So to start off our presentations, we're going to invite Deputy Chief Jonathan Cox and Tyler Stern to present on behalf of CAL FIRE.
Excellent. Thank you, Hannah. And it's always hard to go after Supervisor Horsley because he's so eloquent with his speaking. So I'll try my hardest. Good evening. My name is Jonathan Cox. I'm the Deputy Chief for CAL FIRE, currently assigned to San Mateo County cooperative programs. And the cooperative programs that I'm responsible for are San Mateo County Fire Department and Coastside Fire Protection District. And I know there's a lot of confusion about all these different districts and departments. Basically, the best way I can describe it is we're responsible as CAL FIRE for all of the wildland fire suppression in the unincorporated parts of the county. In addition to that, the Coastside Fire Protection District contracts with us to provide the staffing for Coastside Fire Department. And the county also contracts with CAL FIRE to provide the staffing for the county fire department. So all in all, we cover about 68% of this county's landmass, predominantly everything from Highway 280 to the west, and that includes Half Moon Bay, El Granada, and Montera. You know, I really kind of enjoy the opportunity to speak about everything that's going on and just kind of how important the fire issue is on the coast side right now. And I think it's really important to start off by just acknowledging how much work is going on between agencies. And I know Supervisor Horsley hit on that, but you know, I've worked in several programs across the state, and bar none, San Mateo County has some of the best efforts going between RCD, parks, fire safe, the fire agencies, very engaged boards from both the county and the coast. And as you know, nothing gets done without kind of everybody's buy-in and working to a collective resolution. So I know it can sometimes feel slow, the issues that are out there, but rest assured that, you know, there are a lot of kind of agencies working collaboratively to get to that point. Just a few things to recognize, and I think for just context setting when we're talking about fire in El Granada, I won't lie that one of my biggest fears is a fire in the Montera, El Granada area of San Mateo County. I think it's up there with Emerald Lake Hills and Burlingame Hills for my highest concern, especially these offshore wind events. But I do think we have an opportunity to really take proactive action for the 90–95% of the time that we're not dealing with extreme weather conditions. And that's where the shaded fuel breaks, defensible space, vegetation ordinances really come into play. There are going to be instances in the next 100 years that are the, you know, once in a 100-year event that may be a large offshore wind event that could have big impact somewhere in the county. And I kind of don't want to set the expectation that we can solve this problem 100% of the time, because I think, you know, as we saw in the Camp Fire and the Caldor, there are extreme weather events, and we have to plan for the worst case scenario, as well as planning for the 95% of the time that we can stop the fire. With that, you know, a couple things that Captain Sturm's going to talk about is really the nitty gritty about ordinances and defensible space and whatnot. But, you know, what I always come back to in kind of thinking about this is all defensible space and all action is kind of starts at home, and it starts from the home out. And that starts from you and your family having a plan, to having a plan for your neighbors, to having the 100 feet of defensible space, to understanding your evacuation routes, to where you're going to go. So thinking about from your own perspective, what if I get woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning tomorrow morning with a wildfire burning in El Granada? What would I do? And I know that's hard to think about, but it's something that should be kind of our first priority. Beyond that, I really do think there is a lot of effort going on for the larger landowners in the county, which includes SFPUC to kind of the back of the El Granada area, and county parks with Quarry Park. There's a shaded fuel break now up in the SFPUC that we and the large landowner, the city of San Francisco, have been working on pretty diligently up there. And that is kind of a first, and that's a first in connecting all the dots between there and Highway 92 and making sure that the escape routes have clearance along the roadside. And And I say that because, you know, the hoops that we have to jump through, both on the environmental side, on the planning side, on the legal side, are fairly large. And so although work may look easy along the side of a road or a shaded fuel break, there's hundreds, if not thousands of hours that go into making sure that can happen. And we do appreciate 100% the support from the community to make that a priority and not kind of slow it down. With that, kind of my final thoughts are just a little bit on the looking forward on the horizon. The fire district, and we have Director Stockman and Director Cheryl on here. They're part of the vegetation management committee for the Coastside Fire Protection District. If you're interested in learning more about that, they have meetings every month or so. They're online, public is welcome to join. They also have a vegetation management action plan, which is really the basis for all the work that's going on in the district right now, and a good way to engage on the fire side. We do also work with the Fire Safe Council with Sheena's office about prioritizing projects, roadside vegetation management, and other projects, as well as Supervisor Horsley's office on Measure K funds that have been really directed towards vegetation management over the last few years. And finally, Supervisor Horsley spoke a little bit about technology. Everyone probably has seen the alert wildfire camera that's now out on the Pillar Point Harbor that looks back into the El Granada area. We also have one up on Montera Mountain, another one down in Higgins Canyon, and we are looking always for more sites to put those. Those are a great resource if you want to hop on and see what a fire is doing. We're doing a prescribed burn tomorrow in Pescadero. You can hop on there and watch us do that whole burn and see how it's going. We also now have the Zone Haven platform. I just got an email about the draft agreement about how we're using it countywide. As someone who's responded to some of the largest fires over the last 5 years, I think there is a lot of kudos to go towards this Board of Supervisors who 3 years ago proactively got their hands around evacuations in this county, which proved immensely important during the CZU lightning complex. And that was not the first time that Supervisor Horsley's office really leaned into the fire issue. About a year and a half before the CZU complex, Supervisor Horsley led kind of a very robust renewal of fire in the unincorporated areas, which included a WUI wildland urban interface risk reduction program, communication, mailers, prevention officer being hired. You know, there's a lot to be said for a supervisor who can see forward and actually lean into the issue, which we're lucky to have the support in this county. With that, the final thing that we're discussing right now is we're looking actually at a pilot program to see about using autonomous aircraft and drones for suppression recon. That's kind of cutting edge that we're looking to pilot in this county. I'm excited about it. I don't think technology is going to solve the problem, but it can definitely help us. That's all I have. I'm always available, email or phone, if anyone in the community has a question or wants to reach out. I'm going to now turn it over to Captain Sturm, newly promoted Captain Sturm. He's been a longtime firefighter here on the coast and was recently hired as a captain into the fire marshal's office. So I'll pass it over to you, Tyler.
Thank you, Chief. Well said. Like usual, I'm going to share my screen real quick here. If you can just let me know that you see it.
Yes, we can.
Cool. All right. Try to click that button right there. 1 second. I'm sorry. Start slide. So like the chief said, I was a firefighter here on the coast for the last 4 years. I've been with CAL FIRE for about 8 years, newly promoted as a deputy fire marshal for San Mateo County Fire. With my primary focus on the wildland urban interface in the WUI. And there's a lot of work to be done. So get right in it. So our goals in the office here is to obviously implement and enforce the fire code, is to do what we're doing now to educate the public on what we're doing, the programs that we have going. And some of those include the vegetation and the weed abatement program and the chipper program. Additionally, we want to enforce and teach people what defensible space truly is. We want to teach people how to make their homes more resistant to fire and harden their homes, as we call it. And we also want to get people ready for if and when that big one happens, what to do and how to most effectively handle the situation. And then one of the most important ones, we want to make sure that this progress that we're doing so well in the last couple of years is maintained and we continue with it. I was talking to a fire captain today, and he's been here for a little over 10 years. And he mentioned to me that in the last 2 years, he's seen more stuff done with this vegetation management than he has in the last 8 or so years before that. So we're really rock and rolling on these programs here. So I'm basically just going to start talking about our programs and then some basic terminology that kind of ties in with what we're doing and that it's good for everyone here to know. So first, we'll talk about local responsibility area and state responsibility area. So essentially, this is just jurisdictions with your local fire department and who they are and where they will respond to. So you see these two maps here, this gray area on the map on the left, that represents local responsibility area. That basically means that's a local city municipal department. That's their responsibility area. So Redwood City has LRA. Menlo Park has LRA. So Half Moon Bay has LRA. SRA is state responsibility area. So that's essentially, to be short, it's CAL FIRE. That's all their lands that they're responsible for. And then you can see that green area on the map to the left. That's federal responsibility area. And try not to get too complicated with it. Sometimes we take it someone else's responsibility area with a contractor or something like that. And that's kind of what's going on in our community here is CAL FIRE is contracted to respond to all the local responsibility area. So Coastside Fire is CAL FIRE, as some of you probably know. Another huge thing to understand is the fire hazard severity zones. So here is a map of our local one here on the coast. So essentially, these are based off of the prevailing climate of the area, the fuel types, so the vegetation types, what's going to burn, and the topography of the area. There's a few different kinds of zones. You can see there's moderate, high, and very high. And then for LRA, we only really, we care about all zones, but we mainly focus on the very high fire hazard severity zones in the case of defensible space and home hardening and building codes and stuff like that. So these are updated supposed to be updated every 5 years. Unfortunately, the last one was updated in about 2007 or 2008, but they are expecting some new maps to come, hopefully within the next year or year and a half. So they have LRA maps and they have SRA maps. If you want to, you can find these all online. If you just Google fire hazard severity zones, and it'll take you to a CAL FIRE website. So essentially, these maps are actually all likely to expand on the new one coming up. So the very high fire hazard severity zones are likely to expand. So which means they'll replace the high and the moderates, and we're going to get more of these very high fire hazard severity zones just because of the way things have gone the last 10 years. So so the county basically will adopt this once they get the new one, and they'll have 120 days to accept or make changes to this however they please. So they can say, no, we think this area is much more in danger than what this map says. So the point of all this is it kind of triggers, like I mentioned before, the building code. So specifically Chapter 7A in the building code for the California Building Code, and that makes it so the requirements to build a house in these areas, these very high fire hazard severity areas, much more stringent, and it's much safer for everyone else involved. Like I said, the LRA can always be modified by the local jurisdiction. So I'm kind of excited to see how the new map turns out as opposed to this one you're looking at right now. So a little bit on our program. So we have a lot going on. Chief Cox mentioned the Coastside Fire District Vegetation Management Action Plan, which is basically and kind of encompasses a lot of these programs listed underneath them. It's just a plan with in conjunction with a bunch of different plans with CAL FIRE and the county to basically make fuel breaks, weed abatement programs, vegetation abatement programs. And so these weed and vegetation abatement programs are essentially, we find these unimproved lots, which just lots around the coast that do not have houses or structures on them. And we monitor, we drive every single street in the entire district, and we make sure that these lots are being maintained. And if not, we'll send them some letters in the mail and say, hey, you have about a month to groom your property. And if they don't, we hire a contractor, and this is all board approved, to basically clear their lot for them, and then we charge it on their taxes. We've been really kicking on this the last year. I think last 2 years was we really started it and improved the program. We got a lot more funding for it, and we're seeing a lot of good results, and we're actually seeing a lot of people who are doing it voluntarily. So we're very excited about that. So but to touch on the Vegetation Management Action Plan again, I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but I just want to mention this was basically built as a result from the CZU Lightning Complex a couple of years back. And what that essentially is it's a roadmap to building like awareness and encouraging defensible space and just reducing risk in the entire community is the overall goal. And Chief Cox also mentioned it's overseen by Cheryl and Stockman representatives. And then we are currently on the second version of the plan, and we are looking to actually expand the vegetation abatement program. I'm one of the ones who goes and drives the lots and drives the whole districts, and I'm seeing a lot of places where we can improve on the vegetation abatement side. The weed abatement's a little easier to maintain. It's a lot less work, obviously, and a little less money to run that program. So, but the vegetation abatement program, we've been seeing some really big results. We have one in particular, if you're in the Moss Beach and Montera area over by Marine, we just did a really nice fuel break to the, I guess, south side of Marine going up to the hospital, Seton Coastside Hospital. And if you drive by on Etheldor, you'll see it, and it's huge. It is absolutely amazing. So we're really seeing results. Yeah, so the Chipper program is also another great program. We work that with the Resource Conservation District, and we essentially just say, hey, these are some good streets where we think that people would be interested in cutting their own vegetation, neatly stacking it in their front lawn, and then a set number of dates, they have a contractor come out and chip all this vegetation for them and get rid of it. So it's a really great program. It requires a little bit of work by the homeowner, but we've also seen great results from that. And then finally, we have the El Granada Resiliency Project, which is just a bunch of organizations kind of coming together and assessing our present and future fire hazards that we have in the El Granada and immediately outside the El Granada area. And then trying to come up with some possible mitigations or solutions to the fire hazard that presents itself in our community. We don't have too much a hand in that, but we do keep up with all the information that comes, and it's a lot of data points that come through. That's really good science that comes out of it. Next, so I'll touch a little bit on defensible space. Like I mentioned, wildland urban interface. That's for all you who live on the top of El Granada. That's WUI, as we call it. WUI, that's WUI Central right there, and that's one of our primary focuses in the edge of Montera and places like that. And our primary focus is just maintaining the vegetation and fuel breaks around all these structures or large residential areas. And I just attached a couple of pictures here with, there's different ways that fires can get you, whether it's not directly burning your house, it's the embers, it's direct flames, and it's just this straight up heat that comes off burning objects that can ignite your house if you're not, if you don't have your defensible space. Just a quick refresher on some basic defensible space guidelines. Just from 0 to 5 feet, we usually have 3 different zones that we abide by. From 0 to 5 feet, we like to remove all the, anything that can burn within the immediate 5 feet around the house. And I'm about to show you a video next, and it's a really good representation of why you want to do that. So we just want to remove some limbs and trees touching the house, touching anything flammable. Within the 30 feet, we want to remove branches within 10 feet of the chimneys or flues for heating and air conditioning. Separate live ground cover, trim tree limbs. We don't want to cut down trees. We don't want to clear cut. We just want to trim up about 6 to 10 feet off the ground. We call these ladder fuels, and we just want to get rid of those. And then from your 30 to 100 feet, we want to keep our grasses below 4 inches and just get rid of all those big piles of stuff and just work with your neighbors. And I'm going to rush a little through here because I only got a few more minutes left, but I want to show you this video. So on the right side, there's a house built with non-combustible materials. In the front, the first little bit in front of the house is non-combustible, and on the left is obviously wooden siding and combustible. It looks like bark or something that they're simulating. What they're doing is they're throwing embers into a fan and seeing what will happen. So you can see it didn't take long for these, you see the embers coming through. Doesn't take long for stuff to really catch. With the wind is just such a huge factor in these things. And you see the house with the non-combustible is, obviously there's other factors with attic vents and stuff like that, but this is just a real bare bones way of looking at it and why we value defensible space and home hardening so much. So we just have a bunch of public resource codes and laws that we follow that we can enforce these with, and feel free to look these up. And I'll shoot out my phone number after this on the chat, and people feel free to call me or email me, and I can refer you to any materials. Lastly, I want to go over, Zone Haven. It was briefly touched on by Chief Cox. Basically, it splits geographical areas into zones, and these zones dictate whether you get alerts if any kind of emergency, not just fires, are going on. You can sign up with the link that I posted right there below. And this connects with SMC alerts, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar, but essentially it's just a texting service that tells you what's going on in your area and let you know whether you have to evac or not. And Zone Haven is just such a good tool. It has a bunch of traffic points, and it's great for first responders and the dispatchers to interfaces with everybody, and we can really figure out how to get everyone out and alert people in a timely and orderly manner. So this is a very great tool that I suggest everyone signs up for, and then SMC alerts as well. And sorry I rushed through a little bit, but that is all I have. And again, I'll post my information in the chat, and feel free to call me or email me anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Captain Spear. So I will present next. Let me just get the presentation up. All right, can everyone see my screen? Thumbs up. Great, thank you. So I know I didn't introduce myself earlier at the start, but I'm Hannah Ormshaw. I'm the Assistant Director for the San Mateo County Parks Department, and formerly the Natural Resource Manager and have worked very extensively on our department's fuel reduction projects. So just a brief reiteration of our goals, like what I hope to relay is that we know we have heard input from the community that availability of information on this topic and opportunities for the community to engage with the Parks Department on these projects is desired. And so we want to share with you all where we're at in our progress for completing fuel reduction projects on the coast side, as well as all county parks. And we have been able to share this information through our website, through some other public meetings and communications in the past, but hope to be able to continue to improve our reach and hope that this information is beneficial. So through this, I'll be sharing about the on-the-ground work we're currently doing, the benefits of the projects, how these actions will help reduce wildfire risk, and the strategies for making further progress on these efforts. So the County Parks Department completed the development of a parks-wide wildfire fuel management program in early 2021. Fuel reduction in county parks has been a priority well before the development of this and will continue long into the future. But this effort to develop this fuel management program was really invigorated following the CZU fire in 2020 to be able to look holistically at all of our park properties and determine which projects were of high priority and that were also feasible for us to implement within the 5-year time frame for the program. So there are 32 projects identified in the department's program, and they're dispersed throughout the majority of our park sites and distributed through the entire county, which you can see on the map. A huge priority for these projects are not only new fuel reduction projects, but also the long-term maintenance of any fuel reduction effort that we implement. And so a number of projects included in this program are very focused specifically on maintaining past fuel reduction efforts. So, if we focus only on the new areas and don't factor in this ongoing maintenance, these areas will regrow and we'll end up back at square one within a few years' time. And so maintenance work is also typically more cost effective after that initial heavy lift of vegetation management is completed. So the 5-year time frame is really not meant to indicate like the end of our efforts for fuel reduction. We plan to keep up implementation and maintenance long into the future, but this 5-year time frame represents work that we can implement. This discrete list of projects, monitor the project progress, and be able to incorporate adaptive management efforts as needed. So really the purpose of any fuel reduction project is to alter the size and composition of fuels in a forest or other vegetated community. The goal of fuel reduction is to mimic a form of natural ecosystem disturbance like a low intensity fire that would have naturally or historically thinned a forest. And over the past 100 years, most forests now have a dense fuel load and are lacking in this type of natural disturbance. So fuel reduction efforts are not meant to stop or halt a fire from spreading, especially during periods of strong wind when fire can be blowing across these areas. However, areas where vegetation has been modified, it can be strategical defensible areas and reduce the amount of combustible fuel so that when a fire does reach one of these areas, it can decrease in intensity. The rate of spread for the fire can slow down. The fire can cool, it can drop from the canopy. And these reduced understory fuels can also help avoid having a fire reach the canopy in the first place. Fuel reduction areas also improve firefighting success by creating areas of lower fire intensity. They improve access for ground-based fire crews to respond to a fire, and they provide opportunities for fire containment efforts. These efforts also improve the ability for residents to evacuate safely should it be necessary. So we are working to be very strategic about the placement of things like fuel breaks or shaded fuel breaks with our projects. And with that, are working hard to be able to provide the greatest benefit possible to the entire communities that are surrounding all of our park sites. So Fuel modification or fuel reduction can include reducing understory vegetation, small diameter trees, reducing ladder fuels, and reducing the number of trees that can contribute to canopy density. Shaded fuel breaks are a common approach to fuel reduction, for which trees are typically spaced so that their crowns are no longer touching, and that lower branches are pruned and understory brush or dead and down material is removed or replaced with masticated or chipped material. Shaded fuel breaks are often placed on ridge tops, along roads, or around structures. And they're often preferred because they do maintain a level of existing vegetation cover and are more cost effective on a per acre basis to implement. Fuel breaks or full fuel breaks in which most of a tree canopy is fully removed are sometimes implemented as well, but are often more suitable over a smaller area and where the terrain is more favorable for equipment or fire personnel to be able to access in the event of a fire. Heavy equipment is often necessary for the initial treatment efforts, such as a masticator, like the equipment you can see in the picture. But in steeper terrain, manual tree removals or manual vegetation work may be needed if equipment can't safely operate. And again, long-term maintenance of this work is always necessary. So of the 32 projects we have, 8 have been underway so far to date. These include 2 large-scale forest health and fuel reduction projects at Hutter and Wunderlich, 2 projects to maintain and expand shaded fuel breaks at Quarry Park, 2 projects at San Bruno Mountain to manage eucalyptus and an invasive shrub species, and 2 projects at Junipero Serra and San Pedro Valley to manage eucalyptus as well. So in the graph, the blue shows new acreage, new treatment areas that were implemented in the last year. The yellow are maintenance activities that we completed in the last year in terms of total acreages. Orange is planned work for the coming few years, particularly 2022 and into 2023. And then gray are is acreage or treatment areas that will be a little further down the road once we advance a little further in our planning efforts. So this slide here is to really highlight the projects that we have on the coast side, showing the project areas at Quarry Park and Pillar Point Bluff. And so to start, the color that's in sort of a bright blue or royal blue color on the map in Quarry is the project that is referred to as the Governor's Fuel Reduction Project, which was originally implemented in 2019 in order to create a network of shaded fuel breaks throughout areas of this park. This was one project in a suite of priority fuel reduction projects that were identified and implemented by CAL FIRE through an executive order from the governor. And the project was identified on a statewide list as a high priority project for public safety. And CAL FIRE went through a thorough ranking and prioritization effort to identify these projects. And it is included in our fuel management program project list for ongoing maintenance to be able to maintain the benefits of this initial work done in 2019. And in the past year, we did a full sweep of this area to control invasive species, in particular broom, which has been growing back. The areas on the map that are in the green or teal colors show a project that really builds on the governor's project efforts to expand this network of shaded fuel breaks and work in areas that were not completed during that project. And the map really helps to illustrate how this work will really build on and expand on that network of shaded fuel breaks. Of the total 119 acres of area for this project, 100 of that will be worked on through a grant funded project with the San Mateo RCD and county parks partnered to focus on understory vegetation removals and hazard tree removals within 100 to 200 feet of park fire roads. We had 9 acres of this completed last year, with more to come through 2020 and 2023. The hope is that with these projects, in the event of a fire, this network of shaded fuel breaks will really enable containment of a fire and help compartmentalize it into discrete areas of the park. The orange on the map shows a proposed full fuel break where all trees within 200 feet of the park boundary on the southwestern side would be removed as defensible space area. And then the work at Pillar Point in the yellow would involve fuel reduction and thinning efforts in the Monterey pine grove and help address pine encroachment on the bluff top. The images on this slide show examples of shaded fuel break work in Quarry Park. So the top photos show the understory density prior to any fuel reduction work being done. And the bottom photos are comparison areas after this fuel reduction work was completed. The result is really a more open understory with wider spacing between the trees and really reduced ladder fuels. And so, field provides a very good visual for the difference in fuel load you see after this fuel reduction work is done. And if you were to, envision or picture the way a fire might behave in these landscapes, the difference in fuel load and how that might affect fire behavior. And then the middle picture shows an aerial image of Quarry Park, and you can see in areas where work was completed, the real change in the canopy density as a result of the shaded fuel break efforts. And just moving away from the coast, I want to highlight some other projects we have going on in other county parks to manage fuel loads or improve ecosystem health. So at Hutter and Wunderlich, there are these 2 landscape scale efforts to conduct a combined 402 acres of forest health and fuel reduction efforts of the 2 parks. So the maps show the various treatment areas in different colors for different vegetation community types. The big picture goals for this project is not just to reduce the fuel loads, but really to reintroduce this form of natural disturbance, or just a form of disturbance, into these ecosystems in place of natural disturbance, promote vegetation regeneration and succession, improve the health and vigor of the trees and vegetation that is retained, and help these forests become more resilient to future disturbances or climate change. These images show good representation of before and after work at Hutter Park. You see where dead or dying vegetation was masticated, which from a fuels reduction standpoint really changes the composition of the fuels that could ignite or burn during a fire, but it also reduces the competition for nutrients like light or water or soil nutrients. And it provides opportunities for new vegetation regrowth. And again, it's a good representation of the difference you see in this understory after the work is completed. At San Bruno Mountain, a first phase for a larger project to manage eucalyptus and fuel loading in a eucalyptus grove was completed to remove some of the dead trees and reduce the canopy connectivity on this park access route. And it will also help provide better access for equipment when we move into later phases of the project. At San Bruno Mountain as well, there are ongoing efforts to control an invasive shrub called gorse, which grows in very dense patches at this park. There was a 5-acre area that did burn in 2020. And so we've been focusing some efforts to prevent that from regrowing back to the same density that it was before. And also removing some gorse in areas adjacent to this. And after we are able to get this invasive species under control, we'll be able to shift our focus more towards native species recruitment. The project for area at San Pedro Valley also focused on eucalyptus management to reduce the stand density of eucalyptus adjacent to neighborhoods in Pacifica, as well as near some in-park facilities. Coming up in the rest of 2022, there will be efforts to continue maintenance and implementation of all of those projects I discussed, including over 300 acres of work at Hutter and Wunderlich and 100 acres of shaded fuel break expansion and hazardous tree removals at Quarry Park. There's also planning efforts for shaded fuel break implementation at Edgewood and Memorial County Parks. And while I've spoken a lot about the projects we have or will be working on, I'd also like to highlight that by having this fuel management program in place, the department has been able to be more focused in how we implement our projects and assign resources for the projects and be able to monitor our progress. And because of this, we've been able to complete 211 acres of fuel reduction work in 2021, with more to come this coming year. It also streamlined our process for applying for grants and have been by having this predefined list of priority projects that might be eligible for grant funding. And so we've already been successful working with the San Mateo Resource Conservation District in this over $1 million grant award from the State Coastal Conservancy, and have 5 other grant applications pending. And I also listed a grant award to the RCD from CAL FIRE. And while this was originally awarded in 2019, it is the funding source for these projects at Hutter and Wunderlich that I mentioned. And so while wildfire risk reduction benefits of our projects that we have planned or have been implementing are substantial for all the projects that we have, as well as those we continue to plan for, we want to promote and incorporate a variety of environmental and ecological benefits into these projects as well. We want to work with nature and not against it. And the fact is that many native ecosystems in California are well adapted to frequent natural disturbances like wildfire. And so we want to incorporate some of these principles like disturbance, regeneration, ecological succession into the projects, promote carbon sequestration and resilience to climate change, be able to focus on control or removal of invasive plants or plant pathogens, and improve habitat characteristics that are compatible with native wildlife that use these parks. And while native vegetation is still susceptible to wildfires, there are many native species that are well adapted to survive or regrow after fires. And then an example of a future project that's not currently included in our wildfire fuel management program that we'll be working on plans to implement in the future is a landscape scale forest restoration effort for Pescadero Creek County Park following the CZU fire, which burned over 1,800 acres of this park and tens of thousands of acres throughout the area. The overarching goals will include forest restoration to promote redwood or old growth redwood forest characteristics and improved habitat for protected species like marbled murrelet, salmon, or steelhead, which are species that have very specific habitat requirements. And the work will also promote long-term climate resiliency, in particular resiliency to extreme weather or fire events. And we'll have more public engagement opportunities for this project throughout the coming year. So hope you can all stay tuned for more on that. And with that, I am going to pass it over to Sheena for a brief presentation as well.
Thank you, Hannah. And let me share my screen. Okay, looks like that's showing up for folks. Yep. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for hosting this, Hannah, the county parks. And it's just nice to have the space to speak collectively in our partnership about all of the different things that we're doing for wildfire resiliency on the coast side. So today, what I want to do is share a little bit about what the RCD is doing and focusing on what the tools we are using for increasing wildfire resiliency. We don't just manage projects, although a lot of that stuff is what we've talked about already about the chipper program and about the Quarry Park projects, work we're doing in Hut and Wonder Lake with county parks. But we also have a lot of tools that we do that you can see, and also behind the scenes to get some work done. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I'll just jump into that. And as I'm looking at the list of folks that are on this at this webinar today, there's some names of the folks that we've worked with and other partners that we've talked to, but there's some new names. So I just wanted to, and I was expecting that, and I'm glad to have that. And so I wanted to share a little bit about what the RCD is really briefly, because some folks are not familiar with this. So what is the RCD? So we are an independent special district in San Mateo County. And we have our boundary of our special district extends, you can see the yellow line on this map over here. And so we're similar to fire districts as well, that they have special boundaries. We don't cover all of San Mateo County, although we do work across the county. And we are also, one of the other things that folks often think is that we're part of the county, but we actually are a separate part of local government. And there are actually about 100 RCDs across the state, thousands nationwide. We are, as a resource conservation district, we help people manage natural resources. So we like to say we help people help the land. And so we're a local hub for conservation. We're actually the first RCD in the state. We're established in 1939. And so we have several areas of focus that we do our work in, which include water, climate, wildlife, agriculture, and forest health and fire resiliency. So today I'm just going to be focusing on the forest health and fire resiliency part. I am the program manager for this section and for this program. And a lot of our work actually overlaps. So similar to what Hannah was saying, a lot of our projects, they have like a primary focus, but there's a lot of overlap. We want to have multi-benefits for helping not only people, but the land, natural resources, the ecosystem. So even within our program, we're touching on all of these things. And so today I just wanted to give that brief overview of some of the projects and work that we're doing. And then if you have any follow-ups, you want more information, please visit our website or feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to share more. So when I mentioned that we're a local hub, the Resource Conservation District, I just want to emphasize what that means. So we're non-regulatory. So we work only where we're invited, and we only work in partnership. We are not a regulatory agency. And we use a diverse set of tools to accomplish our work. So listed here are some of the things that we do. So we provide technical assistance. This is actually our bread and butter of working with private and public landowners to provide necessary technical assistance for natural resource conservation, outreach and education. Most folks are most familiar with our projects that we do. So this includes project design and project implementation. And then this is a little bit more of the behind the scenes work, but we're really proud of it. We've actually been doing a lot of good work in this space of streamlining permitting and environmental compliance. Chief Cox earlier mentioned that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to meet environmental compliance to get this important work done. And so this is the place where we can help to identify where we can streamline this and make it easier to do this important work. And then also we serve on a lot of committees and task force to shape the policy that will get more work done. So we serve on local, regional, and state committees and task force. And of course, we work in partnership. Hannah and Tyler did a great job explaining some of the partnership projects that we are already doing. So I'll start with that, just highlighting that this work is always done in partnership. This includes agencies, organizations, and private and public landowners. So we work where we're invited. So now I'll go a little bit into some of the tools that we use and highlight how some of these tools are applicable to some of this wildfire resiliency work that we do. So as I was sharing earlier, technical assistance is our bread and butter. We help any private or public landowners that want assistance with natural resource management. And so this picture that you'll see at the top, this is actually an image from when we were providing technical assistance post-fire in the burn zone after the CZU lightning complex fires in 2020. Landowners invited us, it was actually a group of landowners invited us out and wanted to know what they could do right away to help restart the recovery process. And so we brought almost all of our staff out. We met with a lot of landowners and we really listened to them and helped them see what resources, we listened to them and see what resources we could provide. And then we actually followed up on that and met one-on-one and like provided personal information, personal guidance and technical assistance. Another thing we do that's kind of in line with that is general outreach and education, similar to what we're doing today, where we're talking to the community and sharing what we have and what we know. Pre-COVID, we had a lot more in-person events. So that's some of the images below of the opportunities where we had talks, we had workshops, we had on-site visits. That's something else that I'm really hoping to do once COVID is in the rear view mirror a little bit more, is that we can have some more on-site visits and actually look at these projects together of what we've been doing. And so one of the things that I think folks mostly know us about, if they're familiar with our work, are our programs and projects. And so I wanted to highlight really quickly some of the things that we're doing. We're doing a lot more than this, but these are some of the ones that's most relevant to our discussion today. First, I wanted to highlight some of the forest health work that we're doing. So Hannah already spoke about some of the work we're doing in Huddart and Wonder Lake, which is over 400 acres forest health work. And again, forest health has multiple goals. So that includes improving forest and ecosystem health, reintroducing that disturbance into the system, but it also benefits wildfire resiliency. A lot of this work is being done in the WUI, in this area that's close to homes and residents, helping with carbon sequestration and improving habitat. So there's multiple benefits. Overall, we're doing our forest health work over 900 acres in the county, which includes state parks and some private lands. And this is funded through CAL FIRE. Another one of our projects that Tyler already mentioned too, thank you, is our neighborhood chipper program. This has been a pretty successful program the last few years where we help to offset the cost of helping folks develop their defensible space in their areas. And so here we are planning to have our chipper event the second week of May. The actual dates we will share with the Coastside community soon, but please be ready that it'll be in the second week of May, we'll have our chipper program come through. And so if you have more questions about that, our website's a good place to check out, or you can give me a call or an email. And then the other project that some folks are aware of, and I wanted to share a bit more, is about our El Granada scoping project. So this project was developed out of, similar to like the technical assistance, where we go out and we listen to the community, and we're also just we like to be very engaged with the community and hear what needs are. So when we were constantly engaging with the El Granada community, and it came up that, you know, folks are scared about the wildfire risk of the El Granada area, which is in that high fire severity zone, the map that Tyler was showing earlier. And so through that, we got together and wanted to develop a partnership that would help to develop this scoping project. And so this partnership includes county parks, CAL FIRE, Coastside Fire Protection District, and Supervisor Horsley's office as well, and Mid-Coast Community Council. And what we're doing is we have hired, the RCD has hired a consultant to scope out, collect data about wildfire risk in the community and the needs of the community. And then the consultants will assess fire risk. And then from that, they will develop a suite of projects and actions that can be used to help mitigate fire risk. And what I really like about this is it's similar to what Hannah was mentioning earlier, where when projects are, like for the county parks does this, and what we're planning to do is similar, is that when the projects are identified, it makes it a lot easier to connect those to opportunities for funding and to actually get implementation. So we aren't going to prioritize and say, like, this is what needs to be done, this is what somebody needs to do, but instead we're going to be able to identify different actions we can do to help make El Granada more wildfire resilient. So I think this is a great way, this is a great example of how we have listened to the community, and we can really work together to get some really great solutions for everybody. And so behind the scenes, we're doing a little bit more with that streamlining and permitting. One of the things that we've done that, again, is one of those things that it doesn't sound as like cool to share, but I do think it's really cool, is we developed a public works plan. And very simply, it was, we worked with the Coastal Commission to help to develop a way we could streamline work that required a coastal development permit, because us and other agencies and partners were finding that that was a little bit of a barrier or a bottleneck to getting some very important vegetation management and fuel reduction and forest health work done. So we developed this way to streamline it, where we could package everything together and work with the Coastal Commission to get these projects done faster without the repetitive review of every individual project, except this way the projects were packaged together. So again, this is like a behind the scenes thing. Might not seem like super exciting to folks, but we're really excited because it's really pushing some projects through. Another one folks might be a little bit more familiar with is the tree exemption that was developed and posted last year in July 1st. And this was working with CAL FIRE and the county planning and RCD, and we worked together to think about a way that we could help to push the exemption so that trees that were a fire risk could be exempt without the tree removal permit. So this is another one that the folks that have taken advantage of this exemption are really excited, because it's been a way to streamline getting some work done and getting some really important hazardous trees removed on private property. And then I just want to mention that not only are we shaping these, we're shaping these projects, and we're making these waves, streamlining environmental compliance and permitting. We're also trying to help shape the policies and actions and see where there's future funding opportunities at the local, state, regional levels. So the San Mateo RCD, we serve on the Fire Safe Council, Fire Safe San Mateo County. We also work in partnership with CAL FIRE, Coastside Fire, the county supervisor Horsley's office in the county's fuel reduction steering committee, where we think about what's the most strategic ways that we can work together to implement projects and get some work done on the ground. And we're also part of the Santa Cruz Mountain Stewardship Network. The county parks is also a partner in this space, where we look at what we can do at that landscape level to help with forest health and fire resiliency. So the two good examples are the Wonder Lick and Hadark County Park projects. Again, those are the 400 acres that are being worked on in the county parks in the WUI area. And we actually were working together with Santa Cruz RCD, who are doing similar projects, and it actually has a landscape effect to improve forest health and fire resiliency. We're also part of the Coastal Regional Prioritization Group, where we're looking at what areas need to be prioritized for wildfire resiliency and forest health work. We collaborate regionally with other RCDs all the way down the coast. And we're also serve on the Joint Forestry Committee. So this is with other RCDs, with CAL FIRE, with fire risk practitioners. It's an advisory committee to CAL FIRE. And we also work on cutting the green tape. So this is a cool way of saying that, streamlining that environmental compliance and permitting work. And so that's the quick summary that I wanted to share about some of the work we're doing. Again, I just kind of touched on everything. You can check our website, or please contact me directly if you'd like some more information about any of these projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheena. So I'd like to have a little bit of time for some questions. I'm going to actually pose a few questions to the group as well, just because we do want to hear from you whether this information that we presented tonight was helpful, whether it was new information, if there was anything new that you learned, if there's a way that we can help share more information like this with you in the future, if there's other ways that might work better, if there's topics that you would like to see more information on, or the frequency in which you might want to hear from us. So I'm just going to have this up here. If you have any input for us, it would definitely be appreciated as well. I did see a few questions in the chat as well, so I will work to answer those as well.
I've had my hand raised. Did you?
Yeah,
Said you
sorry,
were, you're going to have time for questions too, right? Okay.
Yeah, so I know you had your hand raised first, Carlisle, so you can go ahead.
Were you finished? I just wanted to make sure I could type it in the chat, but it's long to type.
No, go ahead. You can speak.
Okay, I had a few questions. So one of them was for Chief Cox. I talked to him back in 2000, before COVID and everything, about the emergency evacuation routes to the north, leaving the mid-coast, and specifically through that eucalyptus grove on Devil's Slide, because it's really a choke point. I've watched the documentary on PBS about the Paradise Fire, and they all got stuck on the roads trying to get out of there, and their tires melted and stuff. So I'm just thinking worst case scenario, if we ever had an Oakland Hills fire in El Granada or something, and God forbid it was be a nice day like today was, and tourists are all down here too. But I was just wondering, is the environmental permitting what's holding it up, or is it Caltrans, or have they not really addressed it at all?
That's a great question. I can't answer for Caltrans. I can tell you, I personally was out on 92 with them, and they are, very engaged in getting this work done.
Actually, I was talking about Highway 1, up north to Pacifica.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm just
Okay.
giving you reference that that they are out and engaged. I can follow up, Sid, for that one with you. From a operational perspective, if we get a fire that the most likely scenario for El Granado that's going to impact the community is a fire coming with a northeast wind on it. If that's the case, and we know that it's already impacting Montera or north of Devil's Slide, we will not advise to evacuate that direction. We will not push people towards the fire when we're telling people to leave.
Okay, and then another question I had was, because I know you were really instrumental in getting Zonehaven up and running, but it's tied in with SMC Alert. Do you happen to know what the percentage of the mid-coast population that already has signed up for the emergency notices through SMC Alert?
That's a great question. So SMC Alert lives with the County Department of Emergency Management.
Right.
I don't know that exact number. But I know that they're always trying to encourage people to sign up. There was legislation a few years ago to try to make all systems an opt-out system. That didn't come to fruition. So it's really just a matter of beating the drum wherever we are to encourage people to sign up.
Okay, and then the last one for you, I have one for the other fellow too, but is there a designated community evacuation center in Moss Beach or Montera?
Great question. Chief Cosgrave is really the lead on all things evacuation. He's the operations chief on the coast. He is working on a plan. I think Director Cheryl might have information on that too, with CERT. What our concern is that we don't want to designate an evacuation point on the coast and have everybody kind of rally at one location when they could actually get off of the coast, get south down Highway 1 or get over 92. So I think some temporary refuge areas have been identified, items like the harbor or potentially the airport. But we don't want to tell people to go to those spots when we want to try to get them out of the area.
Yeah, and I heard the airport was out of a possibility because they might be needing that to bring in supplies or even some of the CAL FIRE air support for big fires. So they did say the airport wasn't going to be a good idea for that, but I don't think they have any facility there. I know the CZU lightning fire lasted weeks and people couldn't go back into the evacuation zone for weeks. So I don't think there's anything up on the north. I remember Half Moon Bay High School was for the CZU fire, but I haven't heard of anything here on the north end of the mid coast.
Yeah, and I think, Sid, one point of clarification on something like the airport. When I talk about temporary refuge areas, I talk about we need to get into this location or our life is in peril. It's kind of what we saw in the campfire.
Yes.
Where we were sheltering people in parking lots because literally the fire was just overrunning the community. So that's what we consider temporary refuge areas. Our priority, and a week doesn't go by in the office that we don't talk about evacuations on the coast, and our priority is getting people out early. And I think that comes with a little bit of knowing we might ask you to leave on some of the smaller fires, and it may frustrate some community members that we over accentuate the evacuations, but it's a top priority.
I was really impressed. One day I was having dinner in El Granada earlier. I think it was this year, but it might have been in December. And I could hear so many fire sirens. And it turned out that a house on El Granada Boulevard caught fire. And they even came from Pacifica. So I know you guys are on it if, to put out a fire fast in that Quarry Park buffer area. But the last question, I might be more for Tyler, but if you can answer it, could a property owner call and request CAL FIRE or the CFPD to come and take a look at an absentee owner's lot that poses a risk to their own property for a vegetation notice?
Yeah, I can. Tyler, you want to take it or you want me to take it?
You can take it, Chief.
Yeah, so Sid, that's a great question. I know it's something that Tyler's office deals with a lot, is people concerned about their neighbor's property. We will always come out on a complaint and take a look. What we also tell anybody who's calling about a complaint is we won't just look at the property that they're concerned about. We will look at all the neighboring properties to make sure that everybody in that area is in compliance.
Yeah.
The thing we are focused on at the moment is vacant parcels.
Right.
And we've prioritized that list based on the fire risk, and year by year we'll be increasing that clearance.
So, but it doesn't go out till May, the notices, right? For weed abatement and vegetation management abatement.
That's
so if
correct.
I have a friend who's about 80 years old and she lives way out on Alamo past Sunshine Valley Road. And right next to her is a guy who has a vacant lot and he never clears it. And she's worried about it because, it would burn her whole house down if it caught fire. So I might just let her know that she might want to give you guys a call. Should I give Tyler's number?
That's perfect.
Okay, thank
Absolutely.
you. That's all my questions. I'm sure somebody else has questions, but those are my burning questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sid. I'm gonna pass it over to Melinda. I think she had her hand raised next.
Oh, thank you, Hannah. I wanted to know if you could put up that Quarry Park map with the shaded fuel breaks that had been already cut, and then the ones, thank you so much. Yeah, I had questions about that. So the one that you said is in teal, is that one's not done yet, right? That's one that you're planning to do?
Yes, that's correct. So the darker teal, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Yeah, so that area is planned for the future, but isn't included in the work plan for this coming year. There's some other work effort that will need to be done to do a California Environmental Quality Act environmental review and other permitting, but it is planned in our fuel reduction program. It's just has not yet been implemented and will be at a future time.
Is that one of the areas that's already you already have funding for that?
No, not at this time.
Oh, okay. That's just the plan for future.
Yes.
Okay. And then what about the orange area? Is part of that orange area that where your cursor was just a second ago, is that up in the Highlands right there?
So the orange area, it starts near the entrance and follows the boundary along the like southwestern side towards Coronado and into like the Murata East area. And so it doesn't extend much further like east or north than the park entrance.
Oh, okay, so that's part
Or
of
west, I
the
should say.
park, that area. I'm
Mhm.
sorry, I'm trying to figure out what the area is there that looks like number 7 that you drew with the orange. I mean, that's the orange line that looks like a number 7 if you're looking at the map, the one that was low.
Oh, okay. Yep. That is Murata East. That's near Coronado. It's a parcel just off of like Highway 1
Okay, so that's like,
lower.
is that in El Granada or is closer to Miramar?
It's still within El Granada, but it is close to the boundary there.
Oh, so the houses on the right side of it is Miramar.
I'd have to double check the boundary there.
East Miramar.
Okay.
East Miramar. Okay, got it. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that whole area then is planned for the county parks, and then the scoping project then wouldn't necessarily be involved in the areas that I just asked you about, the teal area or the orange areas? Or could it be involved in that?
Yeah, the scoping project would be like a complement to the projects we have planned. It would consider work that we have, included as projects, but would really look at what other areas might be high fire risk and what other options there are to complement some of these efforts, not necessarily reiterate or replace that.
Oh, so some of the funding could come from what the scoping project has acquired from Measure K?
So the scoping project hasn't acquired additional funding. The funding that has gone towards that so far is just to complete the plan and complete that project. So it hasn't secured additional funding, but it may recommend or provide project recommendations that could then be submitted for future grant opportunities or future funding, but doesn't have additional funding secured through that program.
Oh, for the areas that you're looking at, it doesn't have additional funding for that. Is that
No.
what you're saying? Okay. Thank you. Thank you so
Thanks.
much.
Yeah, Len, I think you were next. Len?
He might be muted.
Yeah, Len, you might be muted.
There I am. Hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I'm on the advisory board for the Fire Safe organization. And in talking to Denise about Highway 1 going north up into Pacifica, she says that some of the constraints there involve the response from Pacifica to working with Caltrans on clearance of the eucalyptus there. And so Chief Cox, you might want to talk with her in more detail about that. That's all I have to say on that.
Thanks, Len. Then Keith.
Hi, I had a couple of questions. I think that the Upper Quarry Park to the kind of the northwest, there's been very little actual, reduction in eucalyptus load. In some of the places, the path is less than 13 feet wide. And I think that for many of us in El Granada, the concern is the Diablo wind coming down through the canyon and basically burning down the town. I mean, bottom line. And so there are two major issues. One is sufficient fuel reduction up in Quarry Park, reduction of the eucalyptus to make El Granada viable. And the second is, if it's not, we have basically 6,000 people in El Granada that, if looking at the Oakland fire, we'd have probably less than an hour to evacuate. And we have basically 2 points of evacuation on the Highway 1, to get to the airport or Leia's Brussels sprouts or whatever. And I can't imagine that happening. And I've not seen anything that talks about that, about the problems around potential evacuation with 2 routes out. And the fact that everything needs to go to Highway 1 to get out. And the very short time span that would be available if Quarry Park actually caught fire. And I'm wondering, where do we go for information on this and who's looking at it? And I'm hoping that that's all within the scope of the RCD project. But I've watched this for 4 or 5 years now and seen very little in terms of actual, here's what we need to do. And I'd love to hear anyone talk about.
So just to speak to some of the first points, so the blue areas, I know it's a little hard to see with the map just because some of those areas overlap with each other or cover up other areas. And so underneath in a lot of these areas is this blue, which is the governor's project area that was completed in 2019. So that's all fuel reduction that has been completed in the vicinity or really throughout different areas of the park. And so some of those pictures shown before do show that significant reduction in eucalyptus density, understory vegetation density, like the number of trees, and the canopy density overall. And so those blue areas are areas that have been worked on recently. And then, really the benefit overall for having this network of shaded fuel breaks the intention would be to be able to provide better containment efforts in the event a fire or something coming in from the northeast in one of these wind events. Should that occur, that the placement of these would actually, improve the ability for fire crews to be able to get into the park, do containment. And so all of those efforts will be, expanded upon and throughout Quarry Park. And I feel like the map on the screen here really shows the extent of what would be accomplished with a lot of that fuel reduction. And I think some of those other points of when it gets to evacuation, it is just a situationally dependent decision, and not really my area to speak to, but there's a lot to consider when it comes to effective evacuation.
Unfortunately, I think that the shaded fuel breaks that we're seeing in Quarry Park right now don't even meet the specifications that that CAL FIRE has for shaded fuel breaks. They say A, that the canopy shouldn't touch, B, they don't talk about eucalyptus at all, and C, they say specifically that shaded fuel breaks don't work in high winds. And that is precisely the scenario that could destroy this town. And I don't see anything happening at all in terms of reducing the total fuel that's up in the northern part of Quarry Park to make the town safe. And we have 6,000 people here with 2 evacuation spaces on the Highway 1, and it's not going to work. People are going to die.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Chief Cox mentioned at the beginning, a lot of our focus is really on these sort of 95% of the time events. We have to acknowledge that there are limits to the effectiveness of fuel reduction, but in the case where 95% of the time a fire may behave in a way that we do have some way to control or contain it, that these fuel reduction projects really do have a tested and observed benefit. It is when you get into some more extreme events that there really is a limit to how effective fuel reduction on its own is going to be, and the focus will need to be on evacuation. But the areas that have been worked on have all been following standard
No.
approach for shaded fuel
Not
break
true.
implementation.
I'm sorry, but standards have not been followed. If you look at the CAL FIRE specifications on what fuel breaks are and what shaded fuel breaks are, they have not been followed up in Quarry Park. There are places up there that are 13 feet wide along the trail, and to both sides, there are eucalyptus stands that haven't been touched. And I'm sorry, but that's not going to work in a Diablo wind, and we're at serious risk here. 6,000 people are at serious risk.
So Keith, I'd like to jump in really quickly here. This is Nicholas Calderon, Director of the Parks Department. I think it's important to frame this conversation in two ways. First, the work that started our fuel reduction effort in Quarry Park was conducted by CAL FIRE, was conducted by crews under CAL FIRE's direction. And every project we've done since then has been in coordination with CAL FIRE. So I really want the public to understand the collaboration that occurs between parks and RCD and CAL FIRE. So we are in constant communication when we pursue these projects. With regards to the concern regarding wind events, that's what the scoping project is. So I certainly hear your concern, but the type of episodes you're referring to, and I'll allow Sheena to respond to this, but that's why RCD is going through this planning effort. So the concern as to no one's looking at it through that lens, that's what RCD is currently doing. So I certainly can't agree that no one's looking at it in that way, given that RCD is actively doing it. And the work we're doing is absolutely in standard with CAL FIRE and their approach. And again, a lot of the work that's been done in Quarry Park has been done by CAL FIRE. So I'm very interested to hear from Sheena on this one.
So basically, you're saying that CAL FIRE hasn't paid attention to its own standards in doing the fire breaks in Quarry Park? Is that what you just said?
No, I certainly did not say that. That's I don't think it'd be further from the truth of what I stated. But Sheena, would you be able to kind of speak towards the scoping project?
Yeah, so the scoping project, there have been several community meetings on it. If anybody else is interested in more, please reach out to me, or you can attend MCC meetings. I attend regularly to provide updates just for folks that might not be super up to date on the scoping project. But the scoping project is going to be looking at all of El Granada, including Quarry Park. And we are using that on we have collected data. Keith, you've participated in the data collection. And we are going to be looking at, the first step is to assess the fire risk. And the second part is to identify projects. And part of the original data collection is taking into account the projects that have already been completed. And we're working with all of our partners. So just the statement that nobody's looking at it is just not true. And we are going to be looking at ways that we can, in many ways, many actions, right? That's why we use the word actions and not just projects, to say that the outcome is going to be to develop a suite of actions, which can include policy, which can include strategy, which can include actual like vegetation removal projects to produce an outcome that would help to mitigate the risk.
Thanks, Sheena. I appreciate you providing that clarification. So Hannah, I don't know if you want to go to the next person.
Yeah, I think James may have had his hand up next.
I have a general question about the tree canopy. I believe that California has lost the most tree canopy of any other place in the United States in the last year. And I wonder if anyone's actually monitoring, because I look at the towns up and down the coast, they're all terrified of fire. They're all looking at taking trees down. You know, ultimately, anyone with an environmental mind feels that, yeah, you want to replace them with something that's more fire resilient, but we have a water shortage. we're seeing a lot of the native pines suffering from drought and then beetle destruction. And so I have some concerns about how all this tree removal will affect the groundwater, the weather, the drying of the plants. And I guess my question is actually fairly wide, because I'm asking if anyone statewide is monitoring the tree canopy, because I think we can take trees down, harder to replace them. But at a certain point, I think we have to look, beyond our own little town to say what's happening to the weather and the soil and the dryness statewide. And I think for me, I worry that if our town gets hotter and drier, we may affect the weather patterns on the other side of the hill. And then my last question, I was looking at another fire presentation from CAL FIRE, and they talked about fire clouds. And my concern is there's so much fuel in that pink area behind El Granada, which touches into the town. Wouldn't a fire cloud be so high and so hot that it's going to send embers down even beyond a tree canopy? And I guess I'll throw in my last comment, and then I'll let you answer. I've been reading a lot of books about the old trees and how they help the health of the forest. And I'm hoping that your group will take that into account as well when what's decided to be removed. So that's all of my questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. So I'm not sure about exact studies, but I do know that there are a lot of research efforts going on in conjunction with different, fuel reduction implementation efforts, and in terms of forest management themselves. I don't know specifics to quote, but I know that there are efforts to study a lot of the effectiveness of these projects and the long-term effects. But the approach with shaded fuel breaks, the benefit with that is it does help retain a level of tree cover, and with a lot of our fuel reduction projects, we do want to promote native species recruitment, like in areas where tree removals or fuel reduction has occurred, would want to see other native species come back in the area. Some areas in Quarry Park even that have had fuel reduction in the past, we have a lot of coastal scrub species coming back in, which is desired. And so that is a component of a lot of these projects as well.
And if I can answer a little bit to the fire behavior piece, and I thought that's actually a very astute observation regarding water vapor and soil moisture. One, I would suggest there was a recent article in Nature, Ecology and Evolution talking about, it's very technical, plant water sensitivity regulating wildfire vulnerability. And essentially what it was saying is the water sensitivity of certain plants actually increasing fire vulnerability, and they believe so, but luckily not in the coast. So if there's any good news about the kind of double hazard. But what it really means from my perspective is a crown fire, which is what we're most concerned with any sort of timber, is extremely rare in California, in essentially this part of California. The Great Basin, Pacific Northwest, much more common. What we're concerned about, if you look at the large fires that have really impacted communities over the last 5 years, is a wind-driven fire, an offshore wind-driven fire. And I think you're exactly right that our concern with any sort of tree is actually the ember cast that comes off of that. So the shaded fuel breaks, again, we're getting back to the 95% of the time, the shaded fuel break is going to have a major impact in slowing a fire. The 5% of the time when a major fire comes through, those shaded fuel breaks won't be what stops the fire. And that's when we have to get people out, and when we'll see a lot of ember cast due to that, essentially a canopy above. So it's really a balance between the number of trees, the water vapor, the canopy, and making sure that it's spaced out. I will say 50 years ago, our state looked much different when you look at density of timber, but that is not a Coastside issue, that's a California issue.
like to turn it over to James, and then Fran, and then just in, sensitivity to people's time, look to end the meeting after those comments. But again, also looking for feedback to us, whether this was helpful, what you want to hear more of again in the future.
Could you put that slide back up of the questions you wanted to see?
Sure.
Okay, hi, this is James. First, thanks to everyone for the great presentations. This has been very helpful and very informative, so I really appreciate that. I have a question regarding fuel reduction efforts in protected habitat areas. And specifically, if a property owner has a protected area with lots of fuel on the ground, say from eucalyptus trees, but they also have the authority to manage that area, such as through a habitat management plan that's been approved by the Coastal Commission, then what agency has the authority to direct the owner to clean up that space in that protected habitat area? Thank you.
I'm not sure if I understand the question, James.
So the property owner has, let's just say like this, I'm trying to make it a generic question. So if a property owner has protected habitat area, so there's a riparian rights area, it's basically an area that has nesting, or there's a waterway, whatever it might be, but it's a protected area. It's a protected area. But the property owner, which is in this case a large property owner, it's tens of acres developer, they have an agreement with the Coastal Commission that they can manage that property, right? They can manage those protected areas. My question is it CAL FIRE or is it SMRCD? But what agency has the authority to tell that property owner? I mean, assuming, let's just for the sake of this discussion, assume that there is sufficient debris on the ground that's been gathering that is a fire risk, but this is a dangerous accumulation of eucalyptus limbs, et cetera. What agency has the authority to tell that property owner to say, look, this is a fire risk, we want you to clean this up? I think I understand that correction notices from CAL FIRE, for example, have limitations. They can't go into protected habitat areas. They can tell property owners to clean up non-protected areas. But in a situation where the property owner has the authority to do this, it's unclear to me who then can talk to that property owner to say that even though it's a protected area, you have the authority to do this with the agreement that you struck with the California Coastal Commission. Therefore, we are requesting that you please clean up this space. Who has the authority to do that?
Yeah, and I can answer that. So for anything that's inside the fire district, if it's an unimproved parcel, then we can, as the agency having authority, request any sort of flammable vegetation be abated. Now, if it's more than an acre, we can actually request just a perimeter fuel break. We don't have to, on large properties, ask that the entire property be basically mitigated. So if I'm hearing you correctly, that would probably be the case. We could ask for a fire break around the outside and to not impede on any areas that are designated as environmentally sensitive. For lots that are under an acre or under a certain amount of size, we can request the entire lot, if it's unimproved, be abated. Where we don't have much authority is on large lands. So let's say, Golden Gate National Recreation Area. We have very little ability to influence vegetation management on that land because they're a large federal landowner.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you very much for that. In this case, the case that I'm thinking about, it's small, less than an acre. It is in a partially developed area. The area in question abuts two neighborhoods. So it is the parcel itself, the parcel that is the fire risk is undeveloped, but it is abutting two fully developed neighborhoods.
Awesome. If I don't mind, James, can you reach out to Tyler and connect with him directly in the office? He'd be the most appropriate person to follow up on that with.
Will do. Thank you.
Thanks.
Just quick clarification too, RCD is not an enforcement agency, so we would not have any role in that. If you needed any technical assistance or support, you could reach out to RCD, but we do not enforce anything.
Okay, great. Thanks, Gina.
Fran?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Fran Pollard. I live in El Granada. In fact, I live right along that orange line that you've got there. And I'm very worried about that and the fire. And I'm wondering how soon you're going to start removing the trees along that orange line. Is that an RCD thing?
So that project isn't included in that project that the RCD and county parks are working on together. That would be implemented at a future date. We don't currently have a timeline for when that would be completed, but we're working towards that within our fuel management program, but right now don't have a specific timeline to be able to share.
But that is something that we've been talking about to see how we can identify funding for it. So that would be potentially another partnership with county parks and RCD.
So not even this year, huh? There's no chance. And you mentioned about getting environmental permits and all that, and I'm wondering.
Yeah, that's correct, Fran. So that would be the first step for that. And so there is a time process for that. And so it would have to wait until after that is completed to be able to get work done.
Well, how long, when do you go for those permits? And isn't this considered an emergency situation? And shouldn't all that be expedited, the permit system and all that, in order to get things moving and keep removing the trees as soon as possible?
There are certain exemptions for fuel reduction, but usually for only small areas. And so, and the environmental review process is really meant to make sure that the work we do is going to be done in the most responsible and environmentally sensitive way and not cause unintended impacts. And so it is very important to go through that process and not bypass it because it is, a very, essential part of any, most of the land management activities we do to make sure we're doing them in the best and most responsible manner that we can.
And Fran, I will tell you that the RCD is, as I was sharing earlier, that we're doing that behind the scenes work. If there is a way to make things like smoother and streamline it, like still doing it properly, but to streamline it, we will find a way. Like we are constantly working on those, having those discussions. But to Hannah's point too, these are environmental compliance ones we want to respect and want to make sure that we're meeting. But if there's a way to streamline it, make it faster,
yeah,
we will find a way.
That's good. And by the way, I wanted to thank all of you, Sheena, RCD, the county, CAL FIRE, for all the work you are doing. I mean, we really do appreciate that. We're just so worried. Today was one of the hottest days I think ever on the coast. It was supposed to be hotter today on the coast than inland, because we had one of those hot easterly winds today, and everything blowing from the quarry park down through the community out to the ocean, and instead of the reverse. So it's very concerning when that happens. Could you put that map back up there? And I would suggest everyone, I just thought of this, take a picture with your phone of each of these so we have it.
We'll also be sharing this presentation, it's recorded, so it will be shared on the County Parks website. And these maps are included within the wildfire fuel management program for the department as well. So these are posted on our website. Okay,
so it is recorded. I was going to ask you that. So how do we get it? Go to the website, or is it on YouTube?
It will be a link posted on the County Parks website.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one last thing. I'm wondering if maybe the county or somebody could maybe start sending postcards to all the residents or something, that they should start cutting and removing some of the trees. I see there's a lot of old, like 100-year-old wooden houses are right around here. And they're full of bushes and trees hanging on their rooftops. People need to be notified. And I'm sure a lot of people aren't even thinking about this or aware of it. I think notices should be sent to everyone to do something about their own property. That would help also.
Thanks, Fran.
So I think oh yeah, the other thing was the sheriff. Will they be around like for evacuation? I hope they would all be on the highway directing traffic and keeping it moving so there aren't accidents and tie-ups. Are they involved? Or who would be involved?
Yeah, Fran, it's Jonathan. They absolutely are. In fact, that Zone Haven platform that we have, it identifies all the intersections that we have to have law enforcement control. But evacuations are definitely in law enforcement's wheelhouse. That goes from door to door to working with DEM to send out the alert. So 100% sheriff's involvement with evacuations.
Okay, thank you. One last thing. I want to, on that map, you said the dark blue is what's already done. Is that right?
So that was originally, implemented in 2019, and we have been doing maintenance efforts annually since then. So in 2020 and 2021, we both did a sweep of those areas to maintain the work. So that is work that has been completed.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the clearing. It's very good. And the light green, what is that area? When is that going to be done?
So work on that will be underway this year.
This year?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fran.
Thank you, all of you, for all you're doing.
Thank you. I see Kathy is another person who hasn't had a chance to speak yet, so I'm going to let Kathy speak and then end the Q&A just to keep the meeting time.
Yes, this is Kathy's husband. She signed in. I had the question. I noticed in preparing for this that there is a little off subject, but it is one of the questions I believe you have was other areas of interest or subjects of interest. I noticed in some of the prior meeting presentations, they discussed about addressing the drainage down the street from Quarry Park, which is basically, so my question is, I'm wondering what's being proposed to address the drainage from Quarry Park down Santa Maria Avenue, and that may be a subject for another meeting, but that's what another interest that I personally would have living on Santa Maria.
Sure, yeah, I don't have anything I can share in this meeting. We may need to touch base and maybe get some more information from you about what you're interested in hearing more about.
Yeah, well, it's under the preferred plan infrastructure section, they make a comment about addressing drainage down the street, which the street is Santa Maria. And sometimes the drainage can be quite significant and jump the curb and go into people's property. Some people have garages that are above the grade that have a tendency to flood when you do have it jump the curb. If you were to drive down Santa Maria right now, you'd see sandbags all along Santa Maria all the way down to where it goes into the Alameda.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a little beyond what the topic for tonight is, but it might be something we can see what other information there is to share.
That would be great.
Yeah,
great. We're talking about additional subjects of interest, and I wanted to wait towards the end to do it because I knew it was off subject.
Thanks. So, I know we're getting close to 9 and, I wanted to make sure we did have a chance to have some Q&A and hear from you all, be able to answer some questions. So, did go a little later, but I wanted to thank everyone for being able to attend and participate. And if you do have other questions, You can reach out to the department as well. And this video, the recording for this will be posted to the website. We'll be, looking for opportunities to share more information with you all in the future as well. But with that, would like to adjourn the meeting and thank everyone for attending, and appreciate all of your time. Thanks all.
Thanks, Hannah.